Hello, Jeff Zwerink again here with Give and Take, where we look at the latest scientific issues to help you be more confident in the truth of Christianity so that you can share the faith with others. Today I'm joined by Mark Perez and Ken Samples, and we are going to address the question, if the heavens declare the glory of God, why are so many scientists atheists? Ken, Mark, good to have you here today.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
So we're going to take a look at this more from a philosophical level, but really the way I hear this question often phrased, I'll paraphrase it a little differently, is, as an atheist, scientist will say, when we look at physics and chemistry and biology, we put it all together, we really have explained everything. So why would I throw God into the mix there? So why do so many scientists end up being atheists?
I can't explain why they would end up being atheists, but I can say that there are some things that scientists are not competent to examine.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's look at what science does. Science is really, as we look at it, natural science, is trying to explain natural events through natural causes. But what they don't do is ask why questions. For example, how do you explain, or why should we have moral laws? How do you explain morality through any kind of physical interaction?
Okay, so just as a scientist, I'm going to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of why questions we ask. Why does the universe expand? Why is there matter rather than not? So it's not that there's got to be something different there. So when you say they don't ask why questions, what do you mean there?
It's a different kind of why.
Okay.
So there's a why that's another version of how.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the why. Why does the universe expand?
Okay, so when that's your comment about the natural, we're looking at explaining why things work the way they do, but it's really how is this happening?
Yes.
Not so much why does it exist in the first place type things.
And think of why more in the terms of a purpose.
Okay.
And so why do we have morals? And if there are moral laws, for example, is there a moral lawgiver? There's no kind of scientific experiment that you can come up with that'll give you that answer. Science is not equipped to ask the question, it's not equipped to give the answer. The same thing with something like the experience of beauty. When we experience beauty, we're doing a couple of things. Number one, we're actually appreciating something that's in the world that's beautiful. Why is there beauty rather than not beauty? And the next thing is, how is it that we have this notion of beauty? Are we actually a reflection of the God that we say exists? And that's why we realize this beauty is because it's part of his nature's manifest. And here we are experiencing it in a way that's not explained scientifically.
No, that's a good point. And it kind of reflects back a few weeks ago, we were talking about, is love just a bunch of chemical reactions? And there is that component of, we can explain some aspect of love through chemical reactions, but there's so much more to it. And it seems like that's what you're saying with beauty. I mean, there may be an aesthetic, or you put things together and this might look beautiful, but it's not really addressing the deeper question, if you will. There's something more to it.
Sure, the scientist or the mathematician, for example, that says, well, I love the beautiful formula. How is it that you have an appreciation for beauty?
So your comment, or in some sense, why are scientists atheists? Or why can so many scientists be atheists? Is that in some sense they're not really addressing the deeper questions. They're kind of looking at it just from a material perspective.
Right. Let's ask the question, why, about some of the hows.
Okay. I know that you've got this quote from Adler that you talk about that seems to be relevant. How would you respond to some of these questions?
Yeah, I think to build on Mark's point, Mortimer Adler, great philosopher, educator of the 20th century, he said that scientists are highly specialized in their education, but it lacks kind of a breadth of education. I mean, Mark is asking philosophical questions, which implies the humanities, which implies theology, philosophy. And I think there are times where a scientist's education doesn't put them in a position where they're going to ask what I would call the big questions of life. I think there is a reliance more on the how than the metaphysical what.
So in some sense, we're getting so deep into it takes so much effort to get into answering this particular how is it working question that as scientists, we just don't take a step back and say, how does this all fit together?
I mean, I was in a room not long ago with four physicists who had specialized training in different areas of physics. Talk about specialization. I don't think that there is a focus on, hey, let's ask more fundamental questions about the nature of reality, the nature of truth. So part of that is maybe the way scientists are educated and trained. And that's also, though, why science is so successful. The specialization does in some ways work and works well.
So it seems like what you're saying in this is it's not so much that what we learn scientifically points us to be atheists or pushes us to be atheists, or some scientists to be atheists, but in essence it's almost like there's some other reason that they're atheists, and then they bring that into their scientific discussion, if you will.
I think there's a lot of times where scientists are indifferent to those deeper questions.
Okay. So why are a lot of scientists atheists? If the heavens are pointing towards God, what's going on there?
Now I want to say something theologically or biblically. I think a fair reading of the book of Romans chapter 1 indicates that people are not neutral when it comes to the God question. Our fallen, our broken nature, our alienation from God means that we suppress the truth and unrighteousness. I think clearly God has to move our heart toward Him. So there is something spiritually in the way.
You know, I actually find that true. Even as a Christian, I tend to want to suppress the truth. So it's perhaps not so surprising that that's going on. So, you know, it does seem to me, though, that even with all the data, there's something more than just having everything point to God. It seems like there's something more there. Is something about Christianity irrational or non-rational, if you will?
Well, I think when you ask why do people come to the conclusions they come to, why are they driven in one direction or another, it's not merely an intellectual process. There are moral concerns. There are a variety of other things that influence their will. And in logic, we would call those not irrational, but maybe non-rational. They're outside the rational sphere.
You know, there really is a common narrative out there that studying science will inevitably lead to atheism. But when you ask the question, what is it, what worldview best explains everything that we see, not just how the world works, but why is there beauty, why is there morality, Christianity really does provide the best answer. And that takes a lot of sting or fear or trepidation over discussing scientific issues. Now, I don't think we ought to go out and say, all right, well, why are you suppressing the truth today? But instead, we have a great opportunity to go engage with that person, to understand what drives them, what concerns, what hurts do they have, to care about them, love them, and ultimately bring the gospel into that conversation, and to let God do the work of changing the hearts.